password or something like that. As Robert said, one of the major features of the course has been our flexible fund. And if we have time today, we can talk about how we maybe did that slightly differently, how our approach to evaluating. But before I got to that, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's online and in the room who were peer reviewers for the flexible fund. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. I'm now going to hand over to James, who's going to lead the in-room session on the flexible fund. Bear in mind there's another parallel online session. And as I said earlier, there are posters in the atrium area of some of the flexible fund projects as well.
Okay, thanks, Kate. So yeah, this is for everybody who's in the room. I think some of the people online, there is an alternate parallel session on reflecting another aspect of EDICa. So everybody in this room is obviously going to be engaging in this particular panel, which is about the organisation work. I've just taken you through as part of the initial kind of overview and introduction to EDICa what keep mixing the term flexible fund and Workstream 3 together, but the Workstream 3, the organisation of working up, we've got 4 people here who've been working on projects that have been funded by Flexible Fund 3, which is associated with Workstream 3. We've also got Preethi, I think you are Flexible Fund 1, but the key issue is that you're sufficiently in line with what we're talking about here in this particular session. So again, just to kind of very quickly remind you, Workstream 3 is about the organisation of work. Kind of what we're talking about here are, and what the theme is of today, and what we're going to have some brief presentations about, and that we're subsequently going to have discussion to follow, is about what practical changes can workplaces make. So we've got 5 speakers. They're going to give you a very brief overview of the research that they've been working on. Some of them are still working on it, a mid to late project in that area. And Preethi is completed a project. So all at various stages. So here is a list of all the people that are here today, and what I plan to do, and hopefully I can keep everybody to that, and everybody who's going to be speaking and our panel guests can keep to as well. We're going to have 5 minutes for 5 presentations, so that will leave us approximately about 25 minutes for some discussion. I think again you've got the Slido QR code, so we'll probably do this variously in terms of how people actually present, but I've gone through that, so I should have moved to that slide before anything else. Oh yeah, I should also mention as well is that, and I'm not sure the extent to which people on our panel have got posters as well in the main area outside. Has anybody? Yeah, 3 out of 5. So that's a pretty good representation. I think there's about 9 in total. So please look at the posters in the breaks, or if you're taking a bit of time out, and hopefully the people who will be on hand to take you through what their research is about. If you've got questions about that, of course. So, without no further ado, I will pass you over to Yetunde, whose research is on enhancing research capacity for Black nursing academics in the UK. And I'll give you your slides. Yetunde, do you want to start us first of all?
Yeah, thanks, James. Morning, everyone. So our study, the FAIR Nursing Study, FAIR stands for Fostering Academic Inclusivity and Representation. And we've sort of explored what that looks like within nursing academy. So we've tried to look at what that looks like within Black nursing academics, working across UK universities, specifically in non-Russell Group universities, because we know that for people that work in non-Russell Group universities, they have very limited opportunities to be able to do research, and it's even worse for nursing as a profession. We do know nursing is like the largest employer of people within healthcare organizations, and that's why their ability to be able to do research is very limited, both in clinical practice and in higher education. So our study wanted to explore what the barriers to being able to do research were, and co-create some practical recommendations that would enhance their research capacity opportunities. So in 2 work packages, we designed a qualitative multi-study that would first of all, in the first work package, explore through qualitative interviews what those barriers to being able to do research are. That's now completed. We wanted to do 15 interviews, but we were able to complete 14 interviews in total. And then the second work package is to use the findings from those interview data to do some co-design workshops that would lead to some co-created recommendations that would enhance their research capacity. That was launched on the 5th of November, and I'm going to be presenting what we've done so far, within the co-design workshop session. The second one is due next week, actually, which will be the last one. So whatever I'm presenting today are insights from the first co-design workshop session that we had. It's not set in stone, not final recommendations. So from the presentation of the interview data, we then realized that we identified 3 priority themes, which is, tackling bias within higher education, shifting the responsibility to tackle these biases, the barriers to being able to do research to institutions, and then addressing the lack of recognition for racism within UK education, higher education. So in terms of emerging solutions that were coming up, we had 3 action points so far. I'm just going to go through those very briefly. The first one is to ensure governance and equity structures are in place within the institutions. And some of the ways that we identified as, the ways we could do this is to establish structures and ensure that senior leadership teams take accountability for these equity structures within the universities. Some very key points was about data-driven audits, like checking people's workloads, what the pay structure looks like, and the progression within institutions, and using that to enhance their research capacity. And then embedding anti-racism KPIs within leadership appraisals. The second one is very major, which is around research culture and support. Protected research time is very key. It was a very key point for everybody, especially to reduce workload for these academics. And one way to do that is to check through academic workloads plan for everybody and make sure that there is evidence to back up that Black academics would usually do more work than their white colleagues. So there is that consensus around doing some audits around what the workload looks like for them and making sure that they are not working more than their other colleagues, and that would give them more time to be able to do their research as well. Something around developing mentoring programs that would that is aligned to their research interest, fostering collaborative forums, to widen opportunities like working with the NHS and the likes. And very briefly, the third one is around representation and recognition. So increasing representation at senior management levels, normalizing conversations around racism, because we try to, it's there, but we try to avoid these conversations. But, through staff forums, reflexive writings, and maybe shortruns, we might be able to have some conversations around that. And the last point is around public-facing charters for accountability and allyship. But yeah, that's it for me.
Brilliant. Perfect timing. Thank you very much. Somebody you passed, but no, the pressure's no on Ria. Do you want to?
I'd like to stand.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Should I be over there? Should I stand here or over
You can
there?
stand here. You can stand here. So yeah, we've got Ria now, who's going to speak about Divergent Minds in the archive, creative engagement with the archive as research workspace.
Thank you. And while I'm talking, please feel free to move, stand, stretch, stim, whatever helps you to engage. In our project, We're working to make archives and collections more accessible for neurodivergent users, both those who visit archives to consult materials held in them and the staff who are employed there. The project team is myself, Anne-Marie Foster and Lucinda Matthews-Jones, working with a range of sector partners. I am a disability studies researcher and neurodiversity specialist. Anne-Marie is a historian and archivist and disability accessibility specialist. And Lucy is a historian with expertise in creative methods. We're all neurodivergent, and we've all encountered a range of barriers when using archives. There are over 2,500 archives in the UK. Existing research on archive access focuses almost exclusively on disability and doesn't give specific attention to neurodivergence. And while those two categories overlap, they're not identical. Of course, much work remains to be done to improve disabled archive access, but the thing is that there is an established conversation about it, and there are a range of resources available. In contrast, there are vanishingly few resources available to support neurodivergent archive accessibility specifically, although neurodivergent people are typically estimated to be 15 to 20% of the population, and I would suspect that's significantly higher in both the researcher and archivist populations. So over the past 8 months, we have collaborated with our partners to gather data, facilitate knowledge exchange, and develop practical resources. Specifically, we've held 4 research and knowledge exchange workshops around the UK and online, where we brought together neurodivergent users of archives and archive professionals to identify barriers and collaboratively develop strategies to tackle them. We've worked with a neurodivergent artist to create 2 infographics based on our workshop data. And you can see a snippet of the barriers one on the slide. I'll show the other in a moment. And these are available now in our online resource hub. We've collaborated with sector partners and an advisory group to develop, pilot and refine a neurodivergent access guide. This is an original, customizable template and associated guidance that walks archives and collections through the process of developing their own tailored neurodivergent access guide for visitors to their setting. And on Monday and Tuesday, we ran our own symposium where we presented our findings, launched the first items on our resource hub to over 100 stakeholders from the archives and collections community. It's been a busy week. Could I have the next slide, please? So scanning the QR code you can see here with your phone or visiting zenodo.org/communities/ND archive will take you to our resource hub. For now, you can see information about our project on there, our barriers and good practice infographics, and the good practice infographics on the slide here as well, and our access guide template and guidance notes. And we'll have more resources being uploaded there very shortly. So what practical changes should organizations adopt? Drawing on our infographic, I'm going to suggest 4 things organizations should consider. So the first one is providing information ahead of time, typically online, and our access guide is designed to support with this. Important to highlight that this is valuable even where barriers still exist or cannot be removed. Having the information and thus the ability to make an informed choice about when and how they engage was almost universally perceived by our participants as something empowering. And offering choice is my next recommendation. Where might it be possible to create different kinds of workspaces and different ways of working? Thirdly, focus on staff access needs. Neurodivergent archive professionals told us repeatedly that where neurodivergent or disabled accessibility was discussed in their workplace, the focus was almost exclusively on visitors, not the people who were employed there. Accessibility for thee, but not for me, was how one participant memorably put it. But of course, in archives and in other settings, the two things are deeply intertwined. And finally, a plea to ensure that the work of improving neurodivergent accessibility doesn't all fall on neurodivergent people. It's vital to recognise and value the knowledge that comes from lived experience and to support those neurodivergent people who do want to drive organisational change. But this kind of work too often accrues to people with lived experience by default, when it's actually everyone's concern. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you want to pass the mic to your left. Tinkuma. Tinkuma was going to quickly take you through a research project called The Impacts of Hybrid Working on Black Women Academics, Productivity and Visibility Post-COVID Higher Education. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so myself and Ifeoma is not here today, she must be online watching. So we are doing this project. I'm the PI and Ifeoma is the co-high on the project. And our aim basically is to understand, the impact of hybrid working on Black female academics, particularly looking at the productivity, visibility, and career progression. And this is really important because out of 25,000 professors in the UK, only 95 are Black female academics. That's really alarming, right? Okay, so hybrid working has come with some advantages. It's brought to us, flexibility, but it has also revealed and in some cases intensified existing inequalities. And we felt that this is really key. So we are using intersectional lens to conduct this research. So we are recognizing race, gender, migration status, and also caregiving responsibilities as all of these interact to shape, our experiences. So the project was co-designed with 8 Black women academics on our advisory board, out of whom we have 4 EDICa experts. And so far, we have completed 16 individual interviews and 2 focus group discussions across different universities. We've started to analyze the data, and we are beginning to see some key themes, which I'll take you through in a moment. So the first one is about workload pressures and emotional labor. So many of our participants feel they always have to stay composed and high performing, even though the pressure is quite high. And this links directly to some of the stereotypes about Black women, being endlessly strong and resilient. The second emerging finding has to do with the need for better mentoring and clear promotion guidance, as promotion documents are often vague, they say. So mentoring has become essential so that everyone can know what it requires to progress in their career. The third concern that was raised was around unwritten rules and hidden curriculum. I think Kate mentioned something similar to this when she was speaking this morning. So they said some colleagues know how to work the system. Some colleagues know how to be visible in acceptable ways, in quotes. And this is much harder for migrant lecturers, migrant academics, and those navigating or managing visa constraints. And then they need to also overcompensate because, the fear of, I don't want to lose my job and all of that. So they overwork in that regard. The next one, and this came very strongly out of the data, was intersectionality. So looking at, all of the emotional pressures, family and then community expectations for Black women, and also, so many other things that others may not experience at this time was key for them. And even though these are very important, they feel like institutions are not, they really recognize the reality of these things that Black women pass through. Next slide, please. So from these findings, we identified a few practical steps that institutions can take. Mind you, we are still analyzing our data, more can follow later. So first of all, We are recommending that universities need clear and consistent hybrid working expectations, along with transparent workload allocation. I think Yetunde mentioned something about that as well. And this is important because where expectations are unclear, inequalities will multiply, will become very serious. The second recommendation we are making is mentoring and promotion processes should be strengthened. You know, clear, accessible guidance is essential, and structured mentoring would help ensure that everyone knows what it requires to progress their career, not just the Black women, but even so, more important for the Black women. The third recommendation is institutions must address these unwritten rules. And this includes supporting staff that are new to the UK working environment and perhaps navigating, immigration constraints. They could also train line managers to be able to spot informal norms that, could disadvantage certain groups. That was also mentioned earlier by Kate. The fourth recommendation, hybrid working policies should embed intersectional flexibility, acknowledging caregiving duties, cultural obligations, and also emotional pressures without penalizing those who speak up, because that's another issue. And finally, institutions need to recognize emotional labor, diversity labor in a meaningful way, offering proper well-being support and valuing the extra work that Black women do to create an inclusive work environment in higher institutions. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Katherine Deane. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman wearing blue glasses and blue hair and the most amazing teal outfit, which was co-designed for me with my research associate on this project, May Gauntlet, as part of her final year project for her fashion degree. Needless to say, she got a first, and this was displayed at London Fashion Week. There are lots of hidden disability access aspects to this project, to this outfit, which I'm very happy to discuss with anybody. But this project, we looked at the disability access in laboratory environments. We know that labs, unfortunately, are historically some of the worst culprits in terms of inaccessibility. So we sort of wanted to say, well, can we assess how accessible they are? Can we make this standard across the sector? And that wish for standardization really is highlighted by the fact that we have 17 partners on this 75k bid, including funders, the Wellcome Trust, EPSRC, the Royal Institute, the Royal Society of Chemistry, the Institute of Biomedical Sciences, charities such as the Lightyear Foundation, and 6 universities. So there is a massive interest in this area. It is very easy to say we have the most accessible campus or labs, and very hard for anybody to prove whether you do or not. So we've created the assessment. It has gone out very widely for checking on whether its content and its implementation is practical. We've created it into an electronic version, and it will be on the JISC emails, JISC survey platform. We're hoping to create an almost automatic report generation project out of that as well, so that you will get a report that just is available for you to put immediately on your web pages, saying what accessibility you have and how it works. We are testing this out on 4 different institutions' shared imaging labs, which are very standard research labs that are available to be booked by various external partners, and also 2 highly accessible labs that actually have been designed by me in large part back in 2016, etc. And we kind of went, well, they've been up and running now for actually about 6 years since they've been built fully. Wouldn't it be good to know whether or not my advice worked? So we went and checked that as well. We are still in the final stages of this. All of this will be released in the new year. We're doing final interviews on lab accessibility, checking what does and does not work. I have updated the lab access guidelines that we've created and creating training materials and checklists. Next slide, please. So what practical changes should organisations adopt? Bluntly, do it. Please do our survey. And by the way, whilst obviously these were designed for labs, they are highly generic. We are aiming them to be applicable for wet labs, dry labs, clean rooms, etc. But bluntly, in 90%, 95% of it is relevant no matter what your space is. Then be brave. Publish it publicly on your web pages. Apart from anything else, exactly as the archivists highlighted, we need the information. If we're disabled and coming into your space, we really need that information to know how to work there and work there safely and comfortably. Then create an action list, a long list of improvements. Oh, and never take anything off it until it's actually solved. Yes, some of those things will be, oh Lord, we need a new lift. And yes, I know that is many, many, many pounds. But if it's not on that list, it disappears and people forget that that is an absolute barrier. And you know what? Money does come in all interesting places, and things need to be refurbished and rebuilt. And some places, the only solution for access is to knock them down. But, you know, when we deal with the new stuff, we can get in there and create brilliantly accessible spaces. Please implement the no-cost improvements immediately. There are lots of them. The vast majority of access is not expensive. Please, as we've repeatedly heard, consult with your stakeholders to identify the priorities for all of your money spending, all of the what you're going to do next, etc. And ensure that your purchases of equipment in particular have considered the accessibility. We have specific guidelines on this. The manufacturers are open to those sorts of discussions, and grant funders should be highlighted that sometimes, yes, this does cost a little bit more to make it work, but exactly as was highlighted, my experience is that retrofitting access adds a zero, at least, if not 2 zeros, to the cost of making your facility accessible. So I am advising many, many places. We have got a poster with a QR code to our website, which will have more of these resources available in the new year. And thank you very much.
Very much, Katherine. I'm going to hand you over to. So, by no means least, we've got Preethi. She's going to talk about a research project, the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on the career progress of disabled researchers, intersectionality with race, gender, and care responsibility. Over to you.
Hello there, I'm Preethi Premkumar. I'm a senior lecturer at London South Bank University. So yes, we wanted to look at the role of disability, race, gender, and caring responsibilities, and how they all interact with each other to determine the career progress of minoritized researchers. So we had a year to do this last year, and we started off with doing focus groups, and we had 2 types of focus groups. We had one group who were early to mid-career researchers, and then another group who were in the senior to late career research stage. So we have 2 focus groups, and most of them were from a disabled, identified as disabled, some also identified as racially minoritized, and some had caring responsibilities as well. And once we conducted those focus groups, we did a thematic analysis and then came up with a survey of about 60 questions, asking about the choices people made for choosing their particular career pathway, and the amount of support they got from their institutions, their satisfaction with their career progression. And then we also looked at the COVID pandemic, what were the barriers and the enablers of the career progress, and the role of their minoritized characteristic in each of them. And then once we got those surveys, so we had about 130 participants from across the UK, academic institutions, people in academic institutions all around the UK. And then we interviewed a handful of them, 17 people, and we inquired into their responses more and what they would like to see happen based on their responses. And so, yes, we are trying to publish those findings, and some of the findings were that those who had severe disabilities, those who had multiple disabilities and speech or language communication problems had perceived more difficulty in their career progress, and they also perceived the benefits of the support during the COVID pandemic more than those who had physical impairments or no disability. So there were some differences in how they perceived their career progress. And then racially minoritized people recognize the support they receive from their institution and outside their institution. And they also benefited, valued being on permanent contracts rather than flexible temporary ones. And those with caring responsibilities also valued having more permanent contracts. So I've got a poster, so I'm happy to talk through those findings with you afterwards. But yes, so got some more funding from our university, and we're trying to see how we can apply that to policy, and how we can look at the HR policies in different institutions, the government, and you know, the funding organizations, and other governance organizations like Ofqual and Advance HE. We want to look at their HR policies and see what they say about the career progression of minoritized researchers. But some of our main recommendations are to look at to emphasize stable contracts in higher education, emphasize and reassure employers of security in their jobs and reducing the fixed-term contracts, and embedding caring-aware career progression. So establishing expectations for flexible work, and enabling equitable promotion for carers and parents. Another finding was more transparency, or our recommendation is about more fairness and promotion, developing clear, opaque standards for career progression, support in EDI leadership in academic roles, and to help them in their publication of their work. But mainly emphasizing mentoring and sponsorship networks for minoritized researchers, advocating for them at different opportunities, pairing experienced leaders with earlier career academics. So those are some of our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Preethi. I'll just take you to the slide one more time. I suspect anybody who's thinking about questions may well have done so already, but I'll leave that slide up there just for a few moments at the least, just so that you can ask your questions. A lot of food for thought, of course. 5 minutes for 5 really good research projects, and lots of things to kind of hopefully stimulate some kind of debate or discussion. Oh, here we go. Some of the questions are starting to come in, etc., something like that. But I would like to say, first of all, apologies for slightly mismanaging the slides there as well. It was my fault for not actually asking people to tell me when to move on, so I take full responsibility for that. So we're now coming up to just after 10 to 12, so I'm not going to keep you from your lunch. I'm sure you're all feeling very quite hungry right now. I just want to have a little bit of a break. So we've got about 20 minutes for questions, and we've got 2 questions so far, and it's looking like Tinkuma, you've got the first question. This is for Tinkuma, please. Does mentoring go far enough to support career development, or is it active advocacy required? Would you like to?
Thank you very much for that question. It's part of the things we've been discussing and thinking about. And recently, we submitted a proposal for a paper to higher education studies, and that has been accepted. It's a 3-star journal article. And one of the things we've said that all of these things are good. They are soft, soft sports for success. But what about the hard stuff? What about the institution? What part would the institution play? Okay, it's not about fixing the women, it's about fixing the system. And, you know, active advocacy is actually required as well. So they go hand in hand. And apart from all of that, what is the institution, you know, the universities, what are the universities doing to actually ensure that all of these barriers that, you know, Black women academics face are taken care of? So there is a path to soft success, but hard success is required as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tinkuma. The next question is, it's wide open to the whole of the panel, so I'll be looking for volunteers first of all. So just signal if you're willing to want to open a response to this particular question. What would be the one most impactful action employers could take to accelerate equity? Katherine, straight out.
I'll dive straight in. I think that institutions desperately need to value their troublemakers. The people that will step up and talk about this stuff despite the huge pressure to be quiet, to not rock the boat. But actually you desperately need us troublemakers to stepping up, because we are desperately invested in this. We usually are not just talking about our stuff. We are talking about our communities. We are desperately worried for the genuine well-being of our colleagues. And we have solutions and we know how to facilitate solutions. So value us, promote us, and give us workload time.
Thank you very much, Katherine. It's like Preethi wants to add something to this.
I think, yeah, training line managers as well to have those open conversations with staff members, so that's recognised in the appraisal system as well, where people feel dissatisfaction in their career progress. They're not getting enough time to do their research, and well, especially in teaching intense institutions where all the emphasis is on doing the teaching, and there's not enough motivation to do research. So just, you know, have training line managers to support minoritized researchers more.
Anybody else from the panel want to try that question? The most impactful action employers could take to accelerate equity.
I'll come in at the end on it if we have time, but why don't we do more of the...
Okay, that seems a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Okay, so the next question is for Yetunde. What was the hardest part of the study? Where's it gone now? Finding participants. That's obviously just one angle on that you may want to answer rather. So, over to you.
Thank you. Indeed, you know, finding participants was a real challenge. We had proposed to recruit participants from across the 4 nations of the UK. We couldn't get anything outside England, so that was a major limitation to our study. Having said that, 14 participants, those 14 participants were recruited from 13 UK universities, 13 English universities, so that's still very diverse. So yeah, it was a real challenge recruiting participants, doing a lot of social media promotion, targeted email interviews. That invitation rather, that really worked. You know, sending emails to people and saying, you know, would you be interested to participate in this study? And so that was a very good approach to recruiting participants. The second aspect to the study, which is the co-design workshops, that was also a major challenge, and we had to push, you know, those co-design workshops 2 times. So I mean, we were supposed to start in July. We literally started in November. It was a real challenge getting people, and I think the composition of our co-design collaborators that we wanted as well. We wanted institutional leads to be part of it, not just Black academics to design this. We wanted research support staff within universities to be part of it. And I think the lack of uptake in this kind of study really shone as well, because it was just a challenge getting institutionalists to come on board, in this study. So yeah, recruiting participants was a major one for us.
Thank you very much, Yetunde. I didn't realise there was some sort of voting system and things were moving up and down the screen. And it didn't make any sense till I realised a little thumbs up at the side. But the question I've decided, I think probably should be asked next, regardless of the thumbs up, is for Ria. Are there any great examples of good practices in any particular archive you've come across? You okay with that?
Yep. I feel like I'm on some sort of television voting show and changing life. Right. Of course, my mind is blanking on the names of the specific archives that did these things. That's always happens in this kind of scenario. But I'll give some examples of things that people talked about. So one was about a particular collection that had imposed that had created a sort of one-click shopping basket system for requesting items from the archive that you wanted to consult. And it was said it was made like online shopping. And one of the things that, if you're not familiar with the archive sector, almost every archive has different systems and processes. It's not the same one. So every time you go into a new archive as a researcher, you don't know what the process is and what you have to do. And sometimes you can't get that information up front. So often, the things that improved accessibility weren't necessarily things that were directly targeted accessibility, but they're things that were targeted at sort of customer service and the overall customer experience, so things like a one-click shopping basket system that was familiar to people from online shopping. Video guides were another thing that people were really, really keen on, a kind of walkthrough of sort of coming through the door. These didn't need to be professionally produced. It could be a staff member with an iPhone and putting that on YouTube so people could see, to remove the intimidation of going into a new space and not knowing the rules. Sensory maps is something else that's really coming through. And I know the National Library of Scotland has done a lot of kind of leading work on this as well. Do people know what a sensory map is? Sorry, I should say that. Okay, I'm seeing a few shaking heads. So basically, it's a map of your setting with often infographics or images to indicate where there are aspects of the sensory environment that people might find problematic. So if I was doing a sensory map of this room, for example, I might note that the lights are quite bright and glaring, okay? I'm not criticising this room, I'm just trying to give examples. Lights are quite glaring. If they can't be adjusted or switched off, I'd mention that. If there is a strong smell of cleaning product by the lectern, if a particular space in a room is being often used for watching like old reel-to-reel film and has a strong smell from that, if a particular if you have to walk through a common space to get into an archive, and that's often noisy because often council archives are based in the same building as the registry office, for example. So if it might be crowded and noisy. So it's something that presents that information to people ahead of time. And there are lots of good resources on that. And it's something that, it doesn't necessarily need specialist expertise to do. You can find those online. So sensory maps were kind of increasingly popular. Finally, though, I think it's often about human interactions. It's not necessarily about tech or this resource or this video guide or whatever. People really talked about, as we said as we had in our infographic on barriers, archives as intimidating spaces, the kind of the fortress, the castle. You don't know how to go in, you don't know what the rules are, you don't know if you're allowed to bring your backpack or if you're allowed to use a pen, And actually just having a person who knows the rules, a friendly face who knows the system and who can welcome you in and who you don't feel stupid asking questions of, that was a really, really big thing that came across. It's the human touch and the personal touch.
Thank you, Ria. And I'll move to the troublemaker in our midst. I quite like the term troublemaker. Clearly, you're not a troublemaker. It's how you're framed if you are suggesting something that nobody wants to really do or actually recognise, which is probably a very much a reflection of what I was kind of touching on. So, Katherine, what can we do when we're told the data doesn't support proposed infrastructure?
Right, so there's a number of ways to address this. First and foremost, my new build, New Science, is a 4-story building with multiple types of labs in it and teaching spaces, and it is highly accessible. And the interviews we've done have really fed back that the structure is brilliant. The speed of getting reasonable accommodations, etc., that can be still problematic, but that's a sector-wide challenge. But that building was brought in on time and 1.25 million under budget. So no, this access stuff doesn't cost extra when it's a new build. When it's a refurbishment, oh God, yes, it does, sorry. But you want to refurbish and have that building working for the next 30 years. So it's a 30-year spread dispersal of the cost. Also, you never talk about how many students or how many members of staff it will affect, because yes, we are a minority. But you do talk about how it will improve the accessibility and the washover effect that it will have for everybody. So my New Science building is regularly talked about by the people that use it as, it's just a nice space. And I kind of go, yeah, you didn't notice the lighting, the sound baffles, the colour choices, the seating choices, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. But it feels like just a nice space. And I'm actually incredibly proud of that as just a nice space. The final thing is, it's ethical. And no, that's not just my opinion. The Declaration of Helsinki had a major amendment to at the end of 2024, changed a lot of the wording. Subject is no longer available. Participants are taking part in research, finally. But EDI is built in throughout that framework. It talks about consultation, it talks about representation, it talks about having integrity with the communities you are supposed to be serving. So no matter what your building is, no matter what the work is that's being done in it, surely it should be done in an ethical manner as well as anything else. And access is ethical.
Very much, Katherine. I'm very much tempted to skip to the question about that refers to sort of short economic aspects of EDI, but somebody else is before that and they've got more thumbs up. So I'm obeying the system, at least at this moment in time. So this is a question that perhaps there's one or two people maybe more likely to be able to answer this. So it's entirely up to who wants to take this question. But did any of the studies explore issues influenced? Oh, sorry, no, I've gone wrong here. Do mentoring schemes risk putting emphasis on individuals instead of institutions? A very pertinent question, given what we've started and proceeded to discuss in one sense. Is anybody on the panel?
Too, this is my question as well, actually.
Okay.
No, I just want to ask the same thing. So yeah, thank you, whoever put that on there.
Do anybody on the panel want to take it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, mentoring is good. And indeed, it helps people to know their left from their right, and it helps with progression and all of that, depending on how it's structured. But what we are saying is those are soft success factors. What is the institution doing to remove those barriers that in fact makes mentoring even necessary in the first place?
Katherine?
And in another project that I'm doing on EDI in research culture, we're looking at reciprocal mentoring, where the more senior partner in that mentoring pair is deliberately going in there with ears wide open to the structural barriers that they can spot that the mentee is bringing to the conversation, so that they can both learn, and so the more senior member can raise it because they know the system, they know how to raise the concerns, they know who to bother, what committee to ask to change those systems. So I agree, mentoring is at an individual basis, but the entire institution is made up of individuals. So you have to have both. You have to have the structural change, but the individual support.
Thank you very much. Anybody on the panel want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I don't think it's putting the emphasis on the individual rather than the institution. It's just an active recognition of the inequalities, and in my opinion, if the university is doing something about it, you have to train the mentors to offer that support, because those are minoritized, often feel diffident and fear failure. They doubt their ability, and that can hold them back. If the majority is the white male and that's the perceived model of success, then we have to recognize where people who don't conform to that feel unable. So mentoring is important for encouraging and motivating people in that sense.
Thank you. Do you want to have one? Yeah, okay, we'll move on to the last question. Hopefully we can squeeze that in.
So just to add on that, because this is something I feel really strongly about, any mentoring scheme created by an institution, it has to be workloaded, and the people involved have to be properly supported. Because sometimes I think mentoring is seen as a sort of freebie for institutions that will solve problems. We'll do a mentoring scheme, and it is very much not as simple as that.
Like that. Okay, so we'll finish with the last, well, it's not the last question, but it's one more question we can manage to get in it. Where is it now? Yeah, it's at the top of the screen. And this is open to the panel. Did any of your studies explore issues influenced by socio-economic status? For example, intersecting with the quote-unquote primary characteristics you explored? That's a good question. So I don't know who wants to be brave enough to give us a quick answer, because I think we're going to be keeping people from the lunches and undo all the good work that we've managed to impart on the audience. Yeah, Preethi?
Yeah, no, we have looked at intersectionality a little bit, but in the paper that we're writing, we have emphasized it's so important. People don't work in silos. They often represent many protected characteristics. So, and we're always there's some research that says that we're always flowing between one protected characteristic and another. So it has to be a conjoined effort. But yeah, I'll have to look at my data. I haven't really looked at it, but we have the data. But yes, we have looked at disability, race, gender, and caring responsibilities, and it might be an additive effect, but it may vary intersection by intersection, but there's no simple answer. But there's definitely plenty of data to say that people are constantly moving from one, and it's not a one solid structure. It's just a kind of a molding structure of different intersectionalities.
Any other further takers on that question? Time's it, 12 minutes past. Okay, we'll try one more question, and we'll take one answer and see whether. Okay.
So we didn't explore socioeconomic status, on its own. We weren't going to do that specifically, but some of the things that came out of the interview data is visa status. People on visa, they and the kind of contract that they had, fixed term contracts, precarious contracts, meant that they had more compounding challenges for them to be able to get being able to do research within their workload, really.
Thank you. So I think it's probably best thing in a range of ways to end this session, really. First of all, I'd like to thank all our presenters. Absolutely excellent. So a quick round of applause. Apologies to the people who submitted questions that didn't get answered. And thank you, Fenella, for putting up the slide without me prompting you to. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So we will now take a lunch break. please try out the VR if you've got the time as well. It's out there back where you came. And after the break, we've got Jemina Napier, who will be chairing the session. Jemima's our deputy PI of the EDI caucus, and we've got Professor Christopher Smith, who's the UKRI EDI champion. I think that's some sort of lecturing audience with this person. So thank you very much for your time this morning. It's been really appreciated, and I hope you appreciate all 5 speakers, and I think it's really been a very interesting and thoroughly thought-provoking session. I really appreciate your time and coming up to field, and you can now relax and get on with and watch everybody else now. Thank you very much. See everybody after the break.